Hi, everyone. Welcome back. Today I'm talking about pasta and not just pasta. We're going to talk about all different scenarios of pasta, different kinds of pastas, different ways to make it, different techniques, uh, different thoughts about it. We're going to different styles. We're going to talk about all different things, and you may learn something here. I've been cooking pasta in my professional career for decades, and I've been eating it since I was a kid. And that's where we're going to start today. We're going to start in my grandma's house because that's probably where the first time I had pasta. Now, you have to realize on my mom's side, it's all Italian people. So, uh, every Sunday, it was a given that we're having pasta, some kind of pasta, spaghetti, patches that she used to make, these little diamonds that she would cut, ravioli, gnocchi, something. We're having pasta. Well, on Sunday, this is what would happen. Everybody was at church. Grandma went earlier. She went the night before, and she'd have the water boiling Sunday morning. She'd have it already salted. The pasta's ready to go in. She'd wait until the first person pulled up in the car and from church, and she knew, okay, church is out. Everybody else is coming. Throw the pasta in the water. By the time she gets it all together, we're all there. Everybody ate. And that's how every Sunday for every Sunday I can remember when I was a kid. And Grandma made her pasta. She made pasta every Sunday, but she would make it through the week also. And her recipe was all-purpose flour and eggs. She put the flour down and make a well in the middle and put the egg and make the dough by hand. That's how she made it. And depending on how many people were coming, was depending how many eggs. Now, if 10 people were coming, she'd make 10 eggs, 1 egg per person. So 1 egg and 2/3 to 3/4 of a cup of flour mixed together, and that was her recipe. So that's how much each person got. Then you got the sauce and everything. Now, sauce on Sunday, if I was at grandma's before, like in the morning when the sauce was cooking, she always had homemade bread. And I would go get some bread and put a little sauce on it, maybe a little bit of oil and salt. But a lot of times I had to sneak it because I think she knew that I was doing that. But, oh, don't eat too much before lunch. Okay. So anyway, that's how I grew up. It was incredible. Here's the deal with pasta. It's so simple to make when you think about this. And her recipe was excellent. She'd make ravioli, like I said. She'd make all different things out of this pasta dough. And it was excellent. But there are different kinds of pasta dough. And when she made pasta, a lot of times what she would do is she would hand crank it through this machine. And after she'd hand crank it, now it has to dry just until it's the right dryness to run it through the cutters. Like if you're going to make spaghetti or fettuccine or something like that, you have to run it through again. And a lot of times the kids, we got to crank on the machine, and it was fun. And but you have to wait until the pasta was perfectly dry, or just dry enough, because otherwise it would stick in the machine, or if it was too dry, then it would slide and it wouldn't cut right. So it was a lot of feeling going on there. So later in life, I decided I'm going to try to figure out the perfect pasta recipe where you just mix the exact amount of flour and the exact amount of egg by weight. So when you roll out the dough, you can roll it and then just cut it. Because she'd have to put flour on each side. And then, like I said, I mean, the whole house sometimes depends. You got 20, 30 people coming. You got 30 eggs worth of pasta drying to get it done just right. So I thought if I could make the perfect, just have it formulated. So you make the dough, you roll it out, and you cut it all in one. And it took me a lot of tries, and I decided I would work in grams. Now, I know a lot of people work with measuring cups and ounces and things like that, but when you want something really precise, you have to realize that in an ounce, I think there what was it, 28.3495 grams. So there's 28 over 28 grams in 1 ounce. So if you're going to say, oh, a quarter of an ounce, well, that's a little over 7 grams. It's easier to say, hey, 4 grams or 3 grams. Then it's very precise. So I weigh the eggs and I weigh the flour. And when I roll it through, after I make the dough, I can even roll the dough up in a sheet, like roll them up so it doesn't take room all over the place, and then unroll it and cut it, and it works great. And and if you want that recipe, tell me and I'll send you a link to it. And I also did that same formulation with semolina flour and no egg. There's different kinds of pasta in this world. There's pasta that you make at home with flour and eggs, or when you buy pasta in the store, a lot of times you can buy fresh pasta like that. But sometimes all it says on the box of pasta is semolina flour, durum wheat. That's it. And if I'm going to buy dry pasta, that's what I look for. Just one ingredient, because that's all they make it out of. So I decided to go ahead and formulate that recipe also. So you can make it, roll it out, and that recipe I use boiling water. And it just seems, I had to try that recipe so many times. And if you want that link, let me know. But that recipe, what happens is, with the semolina, it depends where you are in the country. In Ohio, the dough's perfect. In Florida, I got to be careful. It comes out really nice, but maybe I'm going to have to put just a tad more flour. Or if I'm in California and it's really dry, maybe I need a few more drops of water. Now, when I'm talking about adding water, I'm talking about drops sometimes, and it makes a difference. Because when you're working with grams and you're already precise, now to make adjustments, you're just adjusting it a little bit. You're not adjusting the whole, get a couple tablespoons. No, just very, very small measurements if you have to do that, if you have to change anything. So anyway, I formulated these two recipes, and it was a lot of work, but it was a lot of fun. I don't use this hand crank. Well, I have a hand crank machine. I have this one. It's a 180. Grandma used to have a 150. It was a little narrower. Now I have a 180. It's wide. And I take it with me all over, wherever I'm cooking. And I have an electric motor that goes on it. But I use that thing. And what happens with that, I know there are some that you can attach to a mixer, but the mixer a lot of times is there. And you have to work right there. With this machine, I can move it all around the table. I don't have to clamp it to the table anymore. Now, it still comes with the hand crank where you can crank it, clamp it to the table and crank it. And it's fun for kids. But if you put the motor on, it just balances it so you can put it wherever you want and work. And then you can use both hands to do the pasta. And sometimes I'm making real long sheets because it's convenient and it's fun. So I make real long sheets sometimes when I'm cooking. Sometimes I want to flour the dough when I'm making it, and sometimes I don't. It depends what kind of pasta I'm going to have in the end, because sometimes the flour from the pasta gets in that water and makes the water starchy. And if you use a little bit of that starch water in your pasta sauce, if your pasta sauce is a little bit thick, that starchy water, Grandma used to do this, and that starchy water, it gives your sauce a nice shine, but it also thins it down a little bit, and it's got flavor because you have salt in the water from cooking the pasta. And with pasta, it depends. How much salt are you going to put in the water? Are you cooking that pasta for 20 minutes? Or are you cooking the pasta for 2 minutes? Because if you're cooking the pasta for 2 minutes, you might want to put a little bit more salt than if you're going to cook it for 20 minutes. It's got time to absorb all that. But, my mom's favorite recipe that I'll make when we go there, she likes the semolina with the boiling water that I make. And I roll it out. And it goes, as soon as I cut them, okay, they're ready to cook. Now, with the pasta, that I make at home a lot of times. Sometimes I'll make a bunch of it and I'll just dehydrate it. Grandma used to dry hers, and again, she'd have them all over the place, drying for days. Okay, so many days, and then she'd put them in packages and keep them for so long. I have this 18 tray dehydrator that this company gave me. It's really nice. But anyway, I'll dehydrate the pasta and I'll make all different kinds. I'll make like little pastine or spaghetti or wide ones or little square ones, because then I have them for a long time and I can use them for all different things. But some of them I'll add flour, some I won't, just depending on what I'm going to do with it. Now, when you go to the store and you're going to buy pasta, and you buy dry pasta and it's just made out of semolina, okay, now when you go to cook that pasta, sometimes the directions will say, now when the directions say, hey, cook this pasta 8 to 12 minutes or 8 to 10 minutes or 11 to 13 minutes, it's normally spot on. If you're boiling the water and you put that in there, somewhere in that time frame, you're going to find out where you really like it. If it says 8 to 10 minutes and you cook it 7 minutes, probably going to be hard. But sometimes for some recipes, you're cooking that pasta and you do undercook it, and then you finish cooking, you take the pasta out and you're putting in it another skillet with oil and a little bit of water, and it absorbs all that oil and garlic and flavor and things over here. Sometimes you cook it the whole way. Sometimes so I just, you know, I'm telling you what's in my mind because maybe it's going to help you when you decide how much water should I use, how much salt should I use. If you're going to make a soup and you want to use dry pasta and it's got a little bit of flour on it, well, you can just keep adding a little more broth or a little stock to thin it out to where you want, so you don't have to cook the pasta and pour any away. You cook it right in the soup and keep all the flavor in there, and you're not discarding anything. And that little bit of flour that's on the outside of the pasta will thicken that water and just give it a nice texture. Not a lot of thickness, just a little bit. Sometimes the recipes will say, "Oh, put a gallon of water for a pound of spaghetti." Okay, maybe overall, okay, you can do that, because when you put the pasta in the water, if you just have a little bit, now you've cooled that water down so much. And sometimes you can freeze fresh pasta. I freeze it sometimes. I'll make it fresh, freeze it, and then when it goes in the water, if you cook fresh pasta, it cooks faster than drying it, because drying it now, you got 12, 15 minutes sometimes if you're making homemade dried, you dried your own pasta. But if you freeze it, you froze it before it dehydrated. And if you cook that in just a little bit of water and you put that frozen pasta in there, now you've chilled that water way down, and it takes a while to recuperate. But if you put a little bit of pasta in a lot of water, okay, now the water's hot the whole time. When you're making pasta salad, you don't have to salt the water when you're making your when you're cooking your pasta. You just don't. But that is one scenario where you would want a lot of water for the amount of pasta that you're going to cook. And if you were going to cook 1 pound of pasta, and you're going to say, okay, I'm going to use a gallon of water, well, that's fine. But you could even use 2 gallons. Who cares? Because you want all the starch out there anyway. Some people even rinse their pasta off after they make it. And by the time you're ready to make your pasta salad after it's chilled, I mean, you're going to add salt. You're going to add everything. There's so much flavor on there, and that pasta is going to absorb it. So you really don't have to worry about salting the water. You can, or you don't have to. Some people, they put oil on the top of their pasta water when they're cooking pasta. Grandma used to do it, and then maybe she wasn't gonna, and then mom said, well, she wasn't gonna, because this is like a big, if you're not gonna do, you're gonna change the way things go. It's a big deal. So I don't put any oil in the pasta. Well, it helps when you strain it. Well, it doesn't help. That doesn't help me. I would love to know how you make pasta. Do you make individual shapes like these by hand, or do you use the machine? What's your favorite way? And when I told you I use the machine, but I use it for everything too. I use it for bread dough. Sometimes I'm making breads and I make different kinds, and sometimes I need it real thin, the bread dough real thin and even, so I'll run it through the machine. But you don't have to use a machine to make fresh pasta. You can make it by hand. You can make, different kinds. It's going to be a lot more work, and but it's fun, and that can be fun for kids too. But it's also fun for kids to crank the machine, and I think it gets them involved in food a little bit. So a chef comes up with an idea. Oh, I want to make a spinach pasta. Okay, how are you going to make the spinach pasta? Are you going to cook the spinach and then dry it and puree it and mix it in? Are you going to try to get the chlorophyll out of the spinach to just make the pasta green? Do you want to dry the spinach? What's it going to do to the flour? What kind of flour are you going to add with it? I mean, all these things start to change. One time I went to Las Vegas and we had a special dinner there at the Mirage. I have a friend, his name's Jeff, and he was the chef there for a while. And he sent us into an Italian restaurant that they had there, and he was making pasta for us. And this pasta, it was homemade pasta. It was just a little different. It just had a little different crunch to it. And I really liked it. And I'm like, what's going on? And I think what he did for his recipe was, when he's using an egg, he wouldn't just use one egg for so much flour. He'd use one egg and a half a yolk. So for 2 eggs, he put one whole yolk. And that extra yolk, if you get a farm fresh egg that's the yolk is almost red, then the color of your dough comes out so rich. But when you're putting extra egg yolk, you're putting that fat, because the egg yolk is a lot of fat. When you're putting that in there, and it just gives it a wonderful texture. Now, some people don't like as much egg yolk in there. Some people just make it out of egg whites. So then you have people who say, oh, I'm going to make mine out of white flour, and I want to put some wheat flour in there. And I might even want to put a little bit of semolina in there. Now you're talking about starting to customize recipes. I mean, you go from the basics of white flour and an egg to semolina, some spinach powder or kale powder. You're going to put some herbs in there. You're going to put whole wheat flour. You're going to put semolina. Some people put oil. Some people put salt. I don't put salt in the dough. Some people put salt. I think it'll cook the egg. I just don't like it. And if you want to create a recipe, sometimes I want to create a recipe and it's like, oh, I'll create the recipe with only a small amount, 1 serving. Because once you have that 1 serving down, especially if you're using grams, and I use a gram scale for everything, and let me know and I'll tell you what gram scale I use too. Maybe I'll just put all these links to this stuff in the comments so you can see. But I use a gram scale. And when you're using a gram scale and you make 1 portion that is so precise with grams, then okay, you're going to make 15 portions. You just multiply it out. It's no big deal. But when you want to try things, I want to try some sweet potato in this dough, or I want to try some pumpkin, or I want to try this, or I want to try whatever it is, you're just making a small amount. So if you don't like it, you haven't ruined a meal for 20 people. So it's something to think about. Well, I hope you enjoyed this time together, and I hope you check back and have a great week.